Let's move on to Article 2, the disclosure article, which states,
Realtors shall avoid exaggeration, misrepresentation, or concealment of pertinent facts relating to the property or the transaction. Realtors shall not, however, be obligated to discover latent defects in the property or advise on matters outside the scope of their real estate license, or disclose facts which are confidential under the scope of agency or non-agency relationships as defined by state law.
Exaggeration, misrepresentation, concealment. Those are the key activities that realtors must avoid in order to comply with Article 2. And this article goes hand in hand with the obligation that realtors have to treat all parties honestly, which we reviewed in Article 1. But note that the article also limits the realtor's obligations in two important ways. First, it limits the types of information the realtor must discover in those areas that fall within the scope of your real estate license. Second, it delineates between those facts that relate to the property or the transaction from facts which would be deemed confidential under the scope of your agency relationship. Let's take a look at each of these limitations. First, let's focus on disclosure of information that concerns the property or the transaction. In many states, there are disclosure requirements concerning the physical condition of certain types of residential property. The primary responsibility of realtors concerning such disclosure is to advise sellers and buyers what the disclosure requirements are and be a resource for the necessary forms. It's also implicit in Article 2 that realtors have an affirmative obligation to disclose what they know about the condition of the property or the transaction. For instance, if the seller has advised you of a water problem due to a leak in the basement, you have a duty to disclose that information to any prospective purchaser. However, the article limits your duty to discover latent or hidden defects or advise on matters that fall outside the scope of your expertise. Let's look at an example. You successfully list and sell a residential property. Several weeks after the closing, the purchaser contacts you and complains that the central air conditioning system in the house is not working, and alleges that you failed to disclose the fact that it was an aging system that would require replacement. Unless it could be proved that you had knowledge of the faulty condition of the system and willfully withheld this knowledge from the purchaser, you could argue that the condition of the central air falls outside the scope of your real estate license. Remember, you're not a home inspector or engineer, and you should not be volunteering opinions in those areas that don't fall under the scope of your expertise. For example, if a prospective purchaser asks you about the condition of a roof, and you volunteer the fact that the roof looks new and appears to be in great shape, the purchaser could rely on your statement and file a complaint if it turned out that there were significant issues with the condition of the roof. Article 2 also makes clear that you have no duty to disclose facts which would be deemed confidential under the scope of your agency relationship.